Republican National Committee Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel has led the GOP since 2017 and is the second woman to serve in the position. In January, she won her re-election bid, making her the longest-serving chairperson in the party's history. I was able to speak with her a bit ago about increasing the presence of women in the party leadership and issues important to the party. Take a listen. Well, Chairwoman, thank you so much for joining us. We saw that in 2020, Republican women were elected in, very large numbers to the House, and we saw them make improvements, across the country in elected office. In the Senate, we know that now there's 9 Republican women serving, in the House, 33, plus 2 Republican female delegates. And we've seen a lot of Republican organizations, EPAC, led by Elise Stefanik, and Winning for Women, work to recruit more Republican women to run for office. And I just want to know what the party is doing to really boost recruitment of Republican women and encourage Republican women to take the leap and run for office.
Yeah, so the RNC doesn't get involved in recruitment at the primary level, although this is a passion point for me. When I started as RNC chair, we went into the 2018 cycle. Elise Stefanik was in charge of recruitment for the House, and we went to the lowest number of Republican women in Congress. And through lots of discussions, we recognized it's not just enough to recruit women. There has to be a financial structure to help them get through primaries, and that's where Elise started the EPAC. Winning for Women started. It was certainly something I did when I was Michigan chair, investing in getting women to run for office. Our voices are so important in Congress. We bring a different outlook and perspective, especially coming out of the pandemic, as many of us are mothers. And so I think Elise and the concerted efforts of the party have helped raise our level to the highest level ever of Republican women in Congress.
Right. And, we know that for Democratic women with groups like Emily's List, they've been at this for, a bit of a longer time, at least with the formation of these specific groups. But I'm curious, why has it been more difficult to get, or I guess, why are there fewer Republican women than there are Democratic women? I mean, what's the difference there? What has been the difference?
I don't know the difference. I will just say, for me, coming in as Michigan chair, I came off the PTA bench. I wasn't in the boardroom. I was a stay-home mom at the time, and ended up running for Michigan chair. So raising money was more difficult. I didn't have those networks.
Yeah.
And so I think these groups that are supporting other women are so integral, recognizing that we're all not coming from the same background. There have been groups that have worked on, called League of Our Own, is one in Michigan, where we actually help train women, give them campaign schooling, how to run a campaign, how to raise money. And a lot of those graduates have gone on to run for elected office. So I think we need more of this in our ecosystem. I'm glad to see it developing. And certainly, as only the second woman chair in our party, it's something that I'm very proud to see happening, that we've grown the representation of women in our party in Congress. But I want to continue to see more of that.
Yeah. And a theme that I'm hearing in a lot of your answers is the theme of being a mother and parents. And we know that a lot of Republican candidates and conservatives have focused on this issue of parents' rights in the classroom, especially coming out of the coronavirus pandemic. Do you think this is a way that could, appeal to more parents, specifically mothers, going into 2024? I
do, just based on my own life, right? So I'm from Michigan. My kids were shut down. And we're definitely dealing as a community with the deficits our kids dealt with, some of the depression issues that the kids had, with some of the learning deficits, and feeling like maybe I don't have the skills I need to be ready for college. We're dealing with a higher suicide rate across the country with young kids, especially young women who are, I think, up almost 100% going to the ER with depression issues. So I think a lot of the resources that have come to the states have not focused on mental health or these deficits that our kids are still dealing with, on top of the kids that have never logged back into the classroom. I think this resonates with women across the board, and certainly will help our party appeal to independent women as well.
Right, and I want to shift to appealing to women voters in general. We know that, last cycle, the majority of women went for Democrats, but when you look at the age brackets, you see the younger women typically leaning left, and as women get older, they lean more right in terms of the candidates they're looking to vote for. So how can the Republican Party maybe recruit some of these young younger women voters or maybe middle-aged women voters, especially those middle-aged women voters who seem to be sort of a swing group almost?
I do. I think they are a swing group. I think they were swinging our way on the education issues and the parental rights issues. And then Dobbs came along, and the Democrats were very effective at messaging and scaring women, saying Republicans wouldn't give life-saving care for things like a miscarriage, which is just untrue. So we've got to articulate our position, recognize in a post-Dobbs world, we have to get into that vacuum and not let Democrats define Republicans. But we also need to reach out to younger women. So the RNC has created a youth advisory group. We're getting women in there who are going to be on TikTok and Instagram and really helping to spread our message to younger women voters, which I think there's been a little gap between us and the Democrats. And I think when we do that, when we talk about economic opportunity, the things that our party stands for, we'll win those voters over. We just have to compete for them.
Yeah, and you brought up the Dobbs decision, and I know you've talked a lot about this in your conversations and interviews since the midterms, saying that you don't think the GOP should use an ostrich method on the issue of abortion, that candidates need to confront this head on and sort of do their version of what the Democrats have done to Republicans and paint Democratic candidates as extremists on the issue. Wanted to hear, how your take on that, what that looks like in 2024.
So I'm proud to be pro-life. I'm proud to be from a party that celebrates life, but we have to understand in a post-Dobbs world, consensus is what's going to have to be found at the state level. And what we've seen is a vast majority of voters do support exceptions with some limitations. The Democrats are the ones who are so out of step with due date abortions, with gender-selected abortions, that's out of step with the whole entire world. That's more like North Korea and China. So we've got to not allow the Democrats to fill the vacuum and paint Republicans as extreme when they are the ones extreme on this issue.
Going into 2024, we are seeing, there's already a woman on running for president on the Republican side, Nikki Haley, and you see women in Republican leadership like yourself, Elise Stefanik in the House, Kristi Noem is a Republican woman governor, for example. How important is it, or explain the importance to me of having Republican women in those leadership roles and how it impacts the party as a whole?
Yeah, so an interesting fact is ever since Sarah Palin was the vice presidential nominee, we've actually had a Republican woman running for president on our ticket or running in that primary since then, with Michelle Bachmann or Carly Fiorina and now Nikki Haley. I think it's kind of interesting that it's become less of a big deal that a woman's running for president, although I think it is still a big deal. I don't think that was the lead news on Nikki. It was more her merits and what she did at the UN and less about her being a woman, which shows how far we've come. But I do think it's important that we have women running for every office in this country. Certainly women are capable of being president, vice president, Senate, and the House. I'm not endorsing anybody. We want to have it be based on merits, but I think it's a wonderful thing for young women to see, people like my daughter, to see that we have Republican women running for the highest office.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting, that point you made about, Nikki Haley not necessarily leading with the fact that, she is a woman, because on the Democratic side, we see, they also lead on their merits, their background, et cetera, but they seem to put gender at the forefront, saying representation matters, very much making that a priority. Whereas Republicans seem to look at this identity, this issue differently. Would love to hear more about how you as a Republican woman approach this compared to how a Democrat would approach it.
Yeah, I would not vote for somebody just based on them being a woman. We want to make sure that you have the gravitas, the background, and the skill set to take on that office. And I think it's important to have women in the conversation, but I wouldn't want someone to vote for me just because I'm a woman. I think we want to be put in these offices because we're qualified. And I think that's what Nikki's running on, and I think that's where Republicans really settle on this issue. Although it is good to have more women voices, I think, in Congress, because we do represent over 50% of the country. And it is important that we bring that perspective. That's going to come through recruitment and recruiting good candidates and getting more women involved in the process. But the voters will determine the best candidate based on their qualifications, not on their gender.
And my final question is, I know you can't obviously endorse as the chairwoman, but do you think having a Republican woman on the ticket next year could, boost the party and boost the ticket and the challenge against whoever the Democrat is, assuming it's Joe Biden?
That's a minefield I'm not going to get into. I'm just not going there. It's a good try. It's a good try. Listen, whoever the nominee is should be able to choose the vice president that works best with them. And as I said before, we're based on merits. We're not going to vote for somebody just based on their gender. And so whomever ends up winning that nomination should be able to determine the best person to be the vice president.
Well, Chairwoman Ronna McDaniel, thank you so much for joining us, and happy Women's History Month.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Happy Women's History Month.